Welcome back. This evening, we're joined by Zoë Titus, Director of the NMT Foundation and an organization at the forefront of media freedom and media development in Namibia. Now, the foundation has been instrumental in supporting the African Media Barometer process, a locally driven, expert-led assessment that measures the state of media environments across the African continent. The barometer's findings offer critical insight into how media freedom, access to information, journalist safety and media sustainability are faring in Namibia and beyond. With the 2022 report now behind us and the 2026 barometer exercise recently concluded, we're going to explore why this initiative matters, how it works and what we can expect from the new report's findings. Zoë, good evening and thank you so much for joining us here on the Daily Roundup.
Good evening, Nina. Always a pleasure to speak with you, and good evening to the viewers.
Well, to start with, Zoë, perhaps you can explain what the African Media Barometer is and, how it differs from other media indices or press freedom reports even.
Well, Nina, you explained it so beautifully in your introduction. I don't know if I can top that. But I have to point out that the African Media Barometer is a self-assessment tool. It's a qualitative self-assessment tool that African countries use to assess their media environment. And we've just recently, over the weekend, conducted that assessment with a panel of selected civil society and media representatives. And the reason why we do that is because I think that internal reflection on the state of our media environment is very, very critical, especially as it allows us to reflect critically and hopefully also set priorities for the future in terms of what the media development priorities should be, what the advocacy and regulatory reform priorities should be.
Well, as you mentioned, the AMB's locally driven methodology is using a panel from media and civil society. Why is this so important for understanding the media environment within Namibia, Zoë?
Well, it is local journalists, civil society actors, and where possible, also involving regulators. We know our environment better than anyone else. So we can speak with insight, raise our concerns, our expectations and aspirations, and in doing so, as I indicated earlier, set priorities for what we would ideally like to see happening within our environment. Nina, I just want to step back for a second and point out that the African Media Barometer takes its cue from the Declaration on Freedom of Expression and Access to Information of the African Commission for Human and People's Rights. So it's taking its cue from the African, let's say, human rights framework and what that framework considers as best practice for our media environment. And just to touch also on a question that you asked earlier that I don't think that I answered very well is why do we do this and how does this differ from other indices? Well, I think that there's the indicators for assessing media environments are generally universal, but in this instance, these are homegrown indicators, as I said, drawn from our own African instruments. But what happens in this instance is that, on an annual basis, for example, people look at the Reporters Without Borders report where they rank countries, or they look at the Freedom House report that also, makes an assessment on the media and broader democratic environment. And then there are lots of indices looking into these. But what is especially important about the AMB, African Media Barometer, is that it normally happens in 3 to 5 year cycles. So in reflection, there is a longer period that you would consider. And in doing so, I think this is also an opportunity where one can assess trends. And I mean, especially in this kind of scenario where you're looking at the democratic space, you can see how things have developed over time and in terms of new and contemporary developments, situate the situation in Namibia, but in that context.
Yeah. Speaking of trends, Zoe, having been involved with the 2022 reports and now the recently concluded 2026 exercise, what trends are you seeing in the Namibian media environment?
Nina, you're asking me to disclose information that I shouldn't. I don't want to preempt the report because, I mean, this report doesn't belong to the NMT Media Foundation. It belongs to the panelists who very generously shared their expertise with us. But I think that there are probably universal issues that are of concern that I probably can highlight. It's the issue of technology, ICTs. I mean, of particular concern was the impact of artificial intelligence on the media and information ecosystem and how that is playing itself out in the Namibian media and information landscape. So that certainly came up as an issue of particular interest. In addition to that, and also because we've just recently experienced our 2024 and 2025 elections, the issues of mis and disinformation and how that impacts on the broader democratic space, that was certainly highlighted. And again, that links to issue of public trust, which again was of great concern. Also issues around media and professional standards and all those factors that impact on this. But I think probably one of the things that received particular discussion and interest is the issue of media sustainability, because I mean it's a global phenomenon. The sustainability, viability of especially news media as of critical concern to anyone working in the media environment.
Zoe, how do you hope that this 2026 report, will be used by policymakers, media organizations, as well as civil society?
Well, I think the most important aspect or a critical aspect of the African Media Barometer is that it is designed to be an advocacy tool. It is a tool that will identify particular priorities in terms of law reform, in terms of audience engagement, in terms of media and information needs, in terms of how newsrooms should respond to ICTs, etc., etc. So I hope that this report will be received well by civil society organizations, the media especially, also educational institutions, those involved in training journalists, because it also reflects on the kinds of training needs that journalists require to, be operational and relevant in this very, very rapidly developing media ecosystem. So firstly, it's an advocacy tool. It sets particular priorities that we hope that everyone will take very, very seriously. And again, it makes us reflect on the standards of journalism, the quality of journalism as a public service.
Yeah. Well, just in closing, Zoe, when can we expect the official release of the 2026 Namibia AMB report?
Well, we are working very hard to ensure that that report is available in May, because the 3rd of May is World Press Freedom Day, which we as Namibians are very involved in, especially in its establishment. And in particular, this year is the 35th anniversary of Vintage Decoration. So we want to celebrate it by bringing something of great value to the media and to Namibians at large. So look out for it, let's say mid-May.
Fantastic. Well, Zoë Titus, thank you so much for your time. We appreciate it. Thank you for joining us.
Thank you, Nina.
That was Zoë Titus, the director of the NMT Foundation, speaking to us about the African Media Barometer process, which was undertaken recently in preparation for the 2026 report. As she mentioned, will be available